Okay, so welcome to ECO2 Smart Schools Climate Conference for COP27. If you're just joining us, we're really keen to know who's here. So if you'd like to put your school name and your country in the chat, we'll give you a mention.
Thanks, Joe. There are some instructions already in the chat about how to mute your notifications. So if you haven't done so, please do mute your notifications so you're not hearing beeps throughout our presentation.
If you lose the feed for the conference at any point in time, just hit the live button and then you'll be returned to us in real time.
And if you've made a comment, don't worry if it doesn't appear straight away. We can see it, but it's going to take a little bit of time for all of our comments to get published, so it will appear.
And if you miss any of the conference, do not worry, we are filming it. So there will be a copy available on the ECO2 Smart Schools website for you to watch in your own time.
And again, for anyone just joining us, please do turn your notifications to mute so your computer's not beeping every time a comment is published.
And we're still keen to know who's out there. So if you can let us know your school name and the country that you're from, we will announce you live on this chat.
And if you do lose the feed at any point, don't worry, because this is all being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube when we're finished. So first off, can we welcome Nehru World School in India?
Welcome. We're very pleased to have you, Nehru World School. And we hope you enjoy the conference. Okay, so if you're just joining us, if you can put your school name and your country in the chat so we can give you our official welcome. And if you lose feed at any point in time, please just hit the live button and then you will join us in real time. If you miss any of the conference, don't worry, because we are recording it and it will be available on the ECO2 Smart Schools website.
So to share your school name and your country, please remember to just click the Q&A button and then you can type in your school name and we can read it out for everybody, because we've got schools participating here in County Durham and all around the world. So welcome to Jamnabai Nase School in Mumbai, India. Welcome to the conference.
We've got a few people behind us who are rapidly scribbling down the schools that are coming. So if we're not announcing you just yet, we will be in a moment. So we have the Woodland Primary School in the UK. Welcome aboard, Woodland Primary School.
Welcome to Butterknowle Primary in the UK also.
Okay, so we've had about 100 schools involved in the lead up to the conference. So we're hoping that 100 schools are going to appear at some point in time. We've just had Crook Primary join us from the UK. Welcome, Crook.
And remember, if you are just joining us, if you do lose the feed at any point, remember to hit the live button when you're back and you can join us in real time live.
And if you miss any of the conference, do not worry, we are recording it and you can access it at the ECO2 Smart Schools website.
Welcome to West Rainton Primary School in the United Kingdom.
So if you're just joining us, if you pop your school name and country in the Q&A chat and we will read you out and say hello. We're going to just leave it a couple more minutes and then we're going to make our official start.
And I've put the instructions into the chat, and so please remember to mute your notifications. so you're not hearing a beeping noise every time someone is publishing a comment. And if your comment can't be seen or isn't being read out straight away, don't worry, we can see it. You might just have to wait a moment or so for us to read it out and publish it for everyone to see.
Okay, I think it's probably time to start.
Yep, let's go.
Welcome everybody. My name is Joanne.
And I'm Durham.
And we're both from OASES. And we'd like to welcome you officially to the ECO2COP27 Climate Conference. And to begin with, we're going to go over to Richard from Durham County Council, who's going to give you a bit of a rundown on what we're going to be doing today. Over to you, Richard.
Thanks, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rich Hurst. I'm Education Advisor for Sustainability for Durham County Council and one of the organisers for this year's live conferences. I'm delighted that so many of you are able to join us this afternoon. And I know some of you were involved last year. So this is the second year that we've run these international schools events supported by Durham County Council, OASES and Durham University. And just to remind you, as Joe and Durham have said, is we are recording these sessions, so we will make them available via the OASES YouTube channel and via the ECO2 Smart Schools website. So if you have missed anything, you'll be able to see it later. So this event is part of the ECO2 Smart Schools programme, which helps schools in County Durham and the wider North East of England to reduce their carbon emissions and learn about energy. And it's all part of Durham County Council's Climate Emergency Response Plan. And we have a target to try and reach net zero emissions by 2045. And today it's going to be an interesting mix, hopefully, for you. We've got a mix of presentations, some questions for you to answer, and also, most importantly, the chance for you to ask questions of our panel of experts from Durham University and Durham County Council, who you'll see a little later on. For this year's conference, we're focusing on the impact of climate change on habitats and ecosystems. So we'll be finding out more about how climate change is affecting many of the habitats around the world through the climate losses section, which is coming up next. Then after that, we'll be exploring solutions that are available to us now all around the world to be able to reduce those problems and challenges that we're seeing. And then finally, we want to finish on climate hopes. So this is where we'd like to hear from you in terms of what you're pledging to do in your own communities to reduce your carbon emissions and to combat climate change. I hope you really do enjoy today's session, and I'll now hand back over to Joanne and Durham to hear about climate losses.
Thank you, Richard. First of all, we're going to be looking at some of your work that you have been doing in the lead up to this conference, all around climate losses.
So first up, from Egypt, we've got students from Dar al-Tabia School who have been investigating how climate change could affect their local ecosystem, which is the desert there, and how animals such as camels could be affected by higher temperatures and less rainfall, meaning something called desertification is happening, where more of the land is turning into desert. And you can see they've made some beautiful posters there.
And now we're moving across to India, where we have students from Nehru World School, who I know are part, and they're here today now. And they've been creating some beautiful posters about the difference between weather and climate and how human activities are increasing the greenhouse effect.
Now over to Hungary, and students from Kossuth Lajos Gymnasium learnt about feedback loops and how climate change is changing ecosystems, not just in Hungary, but all around the world. And you can see the presentation there they've been giving in their class and some feedback loops they've been making on their board.
And now over to the UK, where we've got pictures of students from Seaham High School, and they were exploring how different ecosystems from around the world are being affected by climate change. So we're really glad to see that you've all been really exploring the effects of climate change on not just your local ecosystem, but from everywhere. And we'd just like to welcome Byers Green Primary, Thornhill in Shildon, Woodland Primary and Delves Lane Primary to the chat. Okay, so scientists from around the world are constantly working to look at the impacts of climate change and to monitor climate change itself. And every 6 years or so, they put all of the work that they've been doing into a special report. And countries from all around the world use the information in this report to decide what we're going to do.
Now, the most recent report was made in 2021, but it's been updated this year. And one of the things that scientists were concentrating on is climate losses.
So we know that ecosystems all around the world are being affected by climate change, but some ecosystems are being affected more than others.
Now, the ecosystems that scientists think are most at risk, you can see here on our slide. So we've got the Arctic tundra, tropical rainforests, the snow forests, the Arctic, coastal wetlands and coral reefs.
The big question that we would like to explore first today is which ecosystem you think is going to be most affected by climate change. So first off, let's learn a little bit more about each of the ecosystems listed.
So first, Arctic tundra. So up at high latitudes near the North Pole, where the climate is cold for most of the year. The soil, the sand, the mud that makes up the soil there, because of the cold temperature, is frozen for most of the year. But because of the warming climate, this permafrost, this permanently frozen ground, is melting. And this is releasing more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere.
Now we're going across to the tropical rainforests, and these are found in countries such as Brazil and Indonesia, and they are becoming warmer and drier. Now the trees in the tropical rainforest like the conditions to be humid, which is wet and warm. So they're not liking these new conditions, and it's causing their leaves to wilt, and sometimes they're drying out to the extent where there are massive forest fires, destroying huge swathes of rainforest.
But we haven't just got forests in the tropics, we've also got forests in much colder climates called the snow forests, and these are found at higher latitudes, so China, Finland and Russia. And these snow forests rely on wildfires to rejuvenate and regrow. However, because of climate change, we're having more wildfires, and this isn't giving the forest time to rejuvenate and regrow, so the habitat is being destroyed. Another problem climate change is causing snow forests is insects that previously it was too cold for them to live there are now able to live in this environment, and they are causing great harm.
And now we're going across to the Arctic. So the Arctic is the most northern place on Earth, and the rising temperatures have meant that the Arctic is basically melting. Now, the first time since records began on the 12th of July 2012, so we're talking 10 years ago, nearly 100% of the ice was melting. And since then, we've had many more of these occasions when the whole of the ice sheet has been melting. Rising temperatures mean that summer sea ice is disappearing and could be gone, completely gone, as early as 2040. This is really bad news for species like polar bears and walruses that rely on the summer sea ice.
Another really important habitat globally is the coastal wetlands, where the land meets the sea. And this is a really important habitat for wildlife all around the world, but climate change is meaning droughts are becoming more common and storms are damaging this wetland, so it's really at risk because of climate change.
And finally, we're going to talk about the coral reefs. So coral reefs tend to be found in countries such as Australia and Fiji. And here, there's two things affecting the coral reefs. The increase in temperature is causing the seas to warm, and the increased level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is causing the seas to become more acidic. These two things, higher temperatures and higher acidity, are basically bleaching the corals and causing them to disintegrate and die. And obviously, if the corals die, it means the whole habitat dies. So all of the fish and creatures that rely on the coral will also be affected.
Now, we'd really like to know what ecosystem you think is most at risk from climate change.
But before we do that, we're going to go over to our expert panel and they're going to introduce themselves. Over to you, panel.
Well, hello everyone. It's a real pleasure to be part of this really exciting and interesting event. My name is Douglas Halliday. I work in the physics department at Durham University, and I'm interested in solar energy and other renewable energy technologies.
Hello. Hi everyone. My name is Dr. Hannah Rustrick, and I'm a human geographer, and I research how people in cities are coping with climate change issues.
Hello everybody, my name's Chris and I also work in the geography department at Durham University, and I'm a glaciologist. That's somebody who studies glaciers. So I'm interested in what's happening to ice in the Arctic and the Antarctic and lots of mountain ranges around the world as well. I'm particularly interested in how these glaciers are responding to climate change and impacting on sea level rise.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Beresford. I work at Durham County Council as a Senior Carbon Management Officer, and it's my job to develop projects to help the Council use less fossil fuels and make our impact on the climate less.
Okay, so we would really like to know which ecosystem you think is most at risk first. So there should be a link appearing in your chat at the moment, and we'd like you to click onto that link and make your vote. So tell us which ecosystem of the 6 that we have described you think will be most affected. We're then going to go on and talk to our panel a little bit to get their opinions. So at the moment we have votes for the Arctic and for coral reefs.
What do you think, Joe? Where do you think will be most affected?
I'm tempted to say the Arctic too, but let's see what the kids think first. Oh, the Arctic is definitely in the lead at the moment, but we've also got the tundra making an appearance.
I can see someone's voted for the tropical rainforest there. Somebody thinks the rainforest is going to be the most badly affected ecosystem.
And coral reefs is also in the running. But I think the Arctic is definitely leading the way at the moment. Don't seem to have anybody thinking that the snow forests will be the most affected.
No, the Arctic is head and shoulders above, unfortunately.
Yes, definitely. I think there's very definite concern over the Arctic coming through on this this chat. Thank you for voting, everyone. The votes are still coming in, and as you can see, every single habitat now has got some form of vote, but the Arctic is by far the one that you are most concerned about. Wonderful. So what we'd like you to do now is to switch your thinking and think about which of those 6 habitats that we mentioned, so the Arctic tundra, the tropical rainforest, the snow forest, the Arctic, the coastal wetlands and the coral reefs, and think which one you would miss the most if we weren't able to prevent climate change from destroying it. So again, go onto the chat and you should find a link, and if you click on that link you can make your vote. That if we can't work together to stop climate change, which one do you think you might miss the most? Okay, so as you make your votes, we're going to give you a little rundown about what's happening. Or not. Maybe not. We might come back to that. So what we'd like you to do now is really think hard about climate losses and any questions that you might have for our expert panel about climate losses. And if you would like to post them into the chat, we're going to keep hold of them and then we will announce them in a little bit. Oh, we've got votes coming in. We have votes.
Yeah, so now we can see your responses to what ecosystem you would miss the most. And I can see that so far leading the way is coral reefs. So 15 schools have said they would miss coral reefs the most.
Yeah, it's leading the ground well and truly, isn't it? What's coming in second, Evan?
Coming in second, we've got tropical rainforest. I think 6 schools have said they would miss tropical rainforests the most if we lost that ecosystem. And then coming in third place, we've got the Arctic. Again, a lot of concern for the Arctic because we know rising temperatures are going to be a big problem there.
Yes, I think we're getting more votes for coral. It's evening out a little bit though, isn't it?
Yeah, we've also got some schools very concerned about snow forests, saying they're going to miss the snow forest environment. And also some schools voting for Arctic tundra.
What's really good to see is how many of you are joining in this voting system. Yeah, so we've had over 55 responses, which is brilliant. 57 now.
But yeah, still coral reef leading the way as the ecosystem that you would miss the most in a future.
But the Arctic is slowly catching up, isn't it? Fabulous. I think we're still going to gather those results behind the scenes so you can still keep posting them in. We're going to be putting all of this together onto the ECO2 website so you can see the results of all of the voting after the conference is finished. But we're going to move along now. And we're going to make sure that you've got a little bit of time to post any questions you might have for our expert panel on climate losses.
So now it's time for you to please post your questions for our expert panel in the question and answer chat. So we'll give you a few minutes now to think about your question and to type it in the Q&A chat, and then we can put your question to our panel of experts.
Okay, hopefully you've had enough time to think and post some questions into the chat. So we're now going to move on to our climate solutions part of the conference, where we're going to explore nature versus technology, because it's not all doom and gloom. Yes, we're looking at some climate losses, but we're also quite hopeful because there's lots of climate solutions out there too.
So I'll be representing Team Technology, and I think technology is going to have the answers to all of these problems that climate change is giving us.
Whereas I represent Mother Earth, and I've been looking after the atmosphere and the climate for millennia. So I believe that the solutions to climate change lie in placing our faith and helping nature.
So to begin with, I've got a fantastic technological solution for creating energy. So we don't want to be burning any more fossil fuels and sending greenhouse gases into the atmosphere in the future. We need more wind energy. And one way we can create more wind energy is with these amazing drones that could fly 500 meters up into the sky where it's much windier. They could generate electricity from the wind up there and send it back down to a ground station where it can then be sent to our towns and cities where we need electricity to live our modern lives with technology. Also, technology is allowing us to fly, but not burning fossil fuels, but perhaps in the future with solar powered aircraft. So in 2016, this aircraft here, Solar Impulse, became the first plane to fly all around the world using only energy from the sun. And another technological solution we have is hydrogen. So we can use hydrogen fuel cells to power cars and buses, and this isn't going to produce any carbon dioxide to pollute the atmosphere. So I think this one, especially hydrogen, could be a big answer to our problems.
Whereas I believe that technology will enable us to carry on leading our lifestyles, but I still think nature is our best way for tackling climate change itself. So here we've got a picture of young people planting mangroves, and this not only helps us store carbon, but also creates new habitats and protects coastal towns and villages from the flooding that is being caused by climate change. So by planting plants, nature, you're not only helping climate change, but you're also creating new habitats whilst protecting towns and villages. And it's not just nature on the land. Mother Nature also has plants in the sea. So we've got algae and we've got seaweed, and they're all growing in the sea, and they take in carbon and they store it. And when they die, they float down to the bottom of the ocean. So again, it gets trapped, which is what we want to happen. And here on this slide, you've got a bit of a combination between you and I, because we've got nature stored in tubes and then placed around urban areas. So we've got carbon capture going on the land, but using my technology from the sea. And finally, we've got tree planting. And I'm hoping all of you children out there who are watching this chat have been doing some tree planting, because trees are massive carbon stores. They store carbon in their leaves, in their branches, in their trunks, and they store it for hundreds of years. So they are a fantastic way of combating climate change. So you can help us combat climate change just by looking after nature and planting. And I think, you know, it's low cost as well compared to technology.
Well, we need technology, don't we? We're not living in the Stone Age anymore. We need our electrical items. So if you know any technological solutions to climate change that are being developed or used in your country, please post them in the chat. And please remember to state your school and your country so we know where your questions are coming from.
We're also interested to know if you're combating climate change using nature. But now we'd like you to switch your attention and think about any questions that you might want to pose to our expert panel on climate change solutions. So get together, take a few moments and post in the chat any questions you might have for our expert panel on climate change solutions. Doesn't like refreshing. I know we can't get off mute, it won't work. We're trying to go over to the expert panel.
Okay, so now we're going to go to our expert panel with your questions about climate losses.
No.
Can you unmute yourself again? Just one moment, I can't hear you. Just try it one more time, please. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully you can all hear us again now. Yeah, excellent. And we're going across to our expert panel, and we've got a number of questions to ask the panel. Okay, so over to you, Durham. What's the first question you've got?
So my first question is from Byers Green Primary in the UK, and they ask the panel, why do people still use fossil fuels when they know it is bad?
Yes. Well, that's a fantastic question, because the real challenge we face is to get people to stop using sources of energy that they have become very used to over many, many years, tens of years, decades. And part of the problem is that we have an energy system that has been built and developed over a very long period of time, which is based primarily on using fossil fuels like coal, like oil, and like gas. And often we talk about the energy transition. And what we mean by that is enabling people to use alternative sources of energy that are not based on fossil fuels. So I think the problem is that we have a very well embedded energy system which relies on the historic use of coal. It's also that for a long time, new sources of energy were more expensive, but now they're becoming much cheaper. But it's also because the demand for energy keeps on growing. So even though we do have new sources of renewable energy being added each year, effectively what that is doing is just compensating for the increase in demands that we have because more people are using more energy. So I think the answer to the question is that we need everybody who's involved in making decisions, which would be the scientists and engineers, alongside the politicians and alongside the companies that support and develop new technologies, to agree to develop alternative sources much faster. And that's part of what they're going to be discussing at the COP27 meeting in Egypt.
Thank you, Douglas. So I'm hoping that you can hear me again. And we've got another question. This is an anonymous question. And the question is, what is going to be the state of the Earth if we do nothing?
So I'm happy to try and answer this question. It's a very good question. If we do nothing, sometimes people refer to this as what we call a business as usual scenario. We just keep emitting more and more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And all of the scientists now agree that the Earth will just get hotter and hotter. There'll be most parts of the Earth will get hotter and hotter. There'll also be some parts of the Earth that will get a lot drier, and maybe other parts of the Earth that will get a bit wetter and be subject to more flooding. But essentially the Earth will heat up, we'll start melting lots of ice on land, sea levels will rise, we'll start to lose some of the ecosystems and habitats. But the good news is that scientists are also in complete agreement that we don't have to carry on as business as usual, that we can still, we've got a little bit of a window of opportunity in the next few decades to reduce our emissions, perhaps even to the Paris Climate Agreement target, which is around about 1.5 degrees or maybe 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. And if we can do that, scientists agree that we will avert, or we will be able to cope with very minor climate changes that will take place, and will avert the worst consequences of climate change.
Thank you, Chris.
So next we've got a question from Woodland Primary, which is, in your expert opinion, what is the best or easiest way to help stop climate change? And Crook Primary have asked a very similar question. How can children help with climate change?
It's a good question, that one, and I think today is part of that solution. It's starting to talk about it amongst your classmates, with your parents and your teachers, and think about what you're doing in your day-to-day life. And is it using fossil fuels? Could you do something differently? Can you turn the heating down a little bit? Could you put a jumper on? You know, do you need to have the lights on all the time? The little things that all do add up. And when lots of people get together, they can start to make the changes in the bigger groups of people, like the schools, like the council, like the university, and then we can start to make the changes that we need to see.
And if I can add to that, as children and as students, you have a lot of power because oftentimes parents do listen to their children. So if you decide that this is an important topic and you talk about it with your parents, and your parents, if they can vote for the politicians who care about the planet and who are focused on decreasing our usage of fossil fuels, then you will be making a difference. And the other way that you have a lot of power is through your pocket money and through any money that is spent in your household. So think about how you and your parents and your family spend money. And is there a way that you can use your money to not support fossil fuels?
Thank you, Stephen and Hannah. We've now got a question from Crook Primary, and they are really interested to know, do you think, in your expert opinion, that we will be able to reverse climate change?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, and I think I mentioned this just a few minutes ago, that scientists are in complete agreement that we can reverse climate change, that if we can reduce our emissions, if we can reduce pollution, reduce our emissions of greenhouse gases, we can reduce the Earth's temperature. And so this is what the Conference of the Parties, the COP meetings, every year it's about countries getting together and pledging to do what they can to reduce their carbon emissions and holding each other to account when that's not possible. But it's very clear that we can. I mean, even if we stopped all of the emissions tomorrow, we sadly will be committed to some warming. So even if we were to go to net zero tomorrow, the greenhouse gases that are already in the atmosphere will take a few decades to kind of be taken up in the ecosystems and in the other habitats and kind of be soaked up, if you like, into the Earth's surface. So we are committed to a bit of warming over the next few decades, even if we return to net zero. But certainly once we've kind of experienced that warming, and if we go to net zero, then we will see the Earth's temperature begin to cool slightly. So it is reversible.
Thank you. Now we've got a question from Nehru World School, and they ask, how can we convince people to stop doing activities that are causing climate change?
Well, my short answer to that question is it costs more money. Yeah, they can save money. Often, a lot of the solutions to climate change will save you money. Certainly in households in the UK, for example, if you turn your heating down, you can save a lot of money and also do good to the environment. So my short answer is it will actually save you money if you adopt a lifestyle that uses less energy.
And if I can add to that, I think keeping climate change and ways to minimize the impacts of climate change as a regular topic of conversation with people who have power to make the change is really, really important. Because oftentimes politicians hope that people will just go away and not raise these topics. But it's really important to keep it on the radar and on people's agendas.
Thank you. We've now got a very concerned question from Crook Primary. What species of animal is currently most at danger of extinction because of climate change?
Wow, that is a tough question. I mean, you know, we know there are millions of species around the world, and unfortunately, we know that species are going extinct every year, and often in response to climate change. I guess one of the things that I'm quite interested in, and I teach students about, and it's related to my research, are polar bears in the Arctic, because every year the ice that freezes over the Arctic Ocean, they use that ice to hunt, they use it to find other polar bears, they use it to feed and sleep and hibernate. And unfortunately, that ice is melting due to climate change. So there is a lot of concern that polar bears are one of the iconic species that may go extinct due to climate change. And I think the scientists think that there will be some populations of polar bears in the Arctic that will go extinct, or they'll have to move much further north into a very small area, rather than at the moment where polar bears are found all across the Arctic. So that is something that people are very concerned about when it comes to climate change. But there will be lots of other species that are vulnerable as well.
Thank you, Chris. We're now going to move on to more solutions-based questions. And one of the questions that's come through is quite a general question, so that maybe each member of the panel could just succinctly add their opinion. And it's about sustainable development. So what do you think we could do in terms of developing sustainably that will help, that will make our future greener? So if you were going to put all of your money on one thing, what would it be?
Well, let me start. I mean, that's a really important question, and I think that also demonstrates the importance of everybody playing a role in finding a solution to this problem and not waiting for others. I think for me, it's being much more aware of the choices you make and the impact those have on energy. So, for example, when you travel somewhere, do you go in a car on your own, or do you go by public transport, or might you choose to cycle, or might you go a long distance by train rather than by flying? So I think those are some practical examples of ways in which you could make a decision that you could choose to implement straight away that would have a positive effect.
I would say citizen activism. The more that people get mobilized, the more the governments have to listen to us. So getting people organized, being visible, pushing the people who have power to make the changes is really important. And governments do listen when a large number of people get together. They're a bit scared sometimes of people. So activism.
I will just briefly add, I think one of the keys to sustainability or sustainable development is renewable energy resources that we've already talked about today. I think they will have to be the future for the Earth in terms of where we get our energy from, renewables.
And Douglas just pinched what I was going to say. I was going to say awareness as well. So I will change it slightly and suggest that everyone should be more informed. Go out there and learn a bit more about the decisions that you're making and what you're doing. And be inquisitive, ask sort of questions that you need to know answers to and find the answers, and then you'll be in a better position to choose the sustainable options.
So following on from that, asking more questions, we've got another one for you. This is from Eschwinning Primary School. What human activity produces the most greenhouse gases?
Well, I think lots of different kinds of human activity contributes to the total greenhouse gas emissions, and some of it is really important. So agriculture, for example, is often not talked about. So agriculture and intensive farming for animals contributes something like 15 to 20% of the total greenhouse gases. So that's important to acknowledge that. I think there are other major sectors that contribute significantly to greenhouse gas emission. The main one is industry. We spend a lot of time making things, manufacturing things. You know, we make cars for people to drive, we make appliances for people to use at their home, we make clothing that we have to wear, we make gifts that people like to buy each other when it's birthday or other important festivals. So the global manufacturing and distribution of manufactured goods contributes a really significant amount to global warming. So I think it's really important when you're thinking about making a major purchase to ask yourself, do we need to buy this? Where has it come from? And what do we know about the carbon that's involved in the manufacture of it? So for example, a smartphone consists of something like 200 to 300 kilograms of carbon dioxide in manufacturing a single smartphone. So many of the things we do have a lot of carbon associated with them.
Thank you for that, Douglas. You're getting some very comprehensive answers, children, so I hope you're appreciating the knowledge in the room there. We've got a very specific question, and the reason it's quite a one that's quite close to my heart as well, because we get asked this a lot in schools. It's from Janbai Narsi School, and they ask, which is more urgent? 1, preventing deforestation, or 2, stopping the use of plastic. So quite often in my job, there's a bit of conflict between what's more important, dealing with climate change or dealing with plastic pollution. So expert panel, it's over to you.
What a question that is, goodness me. I don't think I could separate them out. My colleagues here might disagree, but I think it's both. I mean, I would not like to think that we, you know, can stop deforestation and then it's okay to continue to use lots of plastic and not recycle it, etc. So I would say both, which is probably not the answer you wanted, but that's my honest answer.
I think we're still learning about the effects of the plastic on the ecosystem. So that, whereas we know a lot more about climate change, we've been researching that for a long time. So I think we need to learn more about the impacts of plastic, but certainly, yes, they're both important.
Thank you very much, panel. I'm afraid we ran out of time to ask you any further questions, but all of the questions that you have answered, we've made a note of, and we will be putting them to the panel, and we'll be putting the answers on the website, the ECO2 website. So don't worry if you haven't had your question answered, we will be answering it, just not live, I'm afraid, because we've run out of time. But we're going to move on to now for you to make your decision, children. So you've heard the different arguments for nature and technology. You've had the opportunity to talk to the panel, and now it's time to make your vote. So where do you think the future, the solutions will lie? Will it be with
Technology.
Or will it be with Mother Nature? Okay, so if you go onto the chat, there should be a live link now. And if you click on that link, you should be able to cast your vote.
And remember all of those fantastic technological solutions that we talked about when you're casting your vote.
I don't need to do anything for nature. Nature speaks for itself.
So I can see now your results from your vote coming in, and technology is leading the way. Oh, it's neck and neck though. It's very close, about 50-50.
Very, very close.
Between the schools that think technology has got the answers and who thinks nature is going to solve climate change. Yeah, it's neck and neck.
It is. It really is. It's definitely 50-50 at the moment. Oh, I think nature might just be gaining on technology. Oh, yes, nature's catching it now. I think ultimately nature and technology have to work together, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cast our differences aside and work together.
Work together. And I think that's what our schools think too.
Yeah.
Looking at your results.
It's super close. I think it's finishing around 50-50. Excellent. So we've had nearly 50 votes cast, and it was still staking around the 50-50 mark. So we're going to move on now. And again, we'll make you aware of the final vote through the website. And now we're going to move on to our climate hopes part of the conference. So there is hope. We've concentrated on losses, we've looked at solutions, so now we're looking at the hope. And people from around the world are already taking action. And we've seen some fantastic stories from you, from the schools that have been working on this project, and we'd like to share some of those with you now.
I've got no sound on the PowerPoint. Do you want to share again with the mic?
Okay, we're just trying to deal with the technical issue, but we'll be back with you in a moment.
There we go. We should have sound now, and we'll start that video from the beginning.
Brilliant.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Amr. The project subject is Go Green. We need to plant more trees. Why? Because trees give us oxygen and decrease air pollution to keep our planet beautiful and healthy. And don't cut leaves. Thank you.
So that was Al Ahram Language School in Egypt.
I love that presentation.
Hello, my name is Nan. Today I'll talk about loving Mother Nature. Number 1, we shouldn't cut down trees like flowers. Number 2, we should minimize pollution by using clean sources of energy like solar energy. Number 3, it's better to go by electric cars or bicycles instead of fuel cars.
That's another wonderful presentation and beautiful drawing by Al Ahram Language School in Egypt. And we've talked about saving trees, minimizing pollution and changing our form of transport. Well done. Now we're moving on to Edmondsley Primary School in the UK, where they took a very personal approach to it and they designed areas in their school that they could develop or improve to become more climate friendly. And they've made pledges of action that they're going to take.
Next up from Italy, we've got the Istituto Comprensivo ECO2COP27, and they've also made a fantastic poster there with some quotes from notable environmentalists about why protecting the planet is so important.
And we've said already, haven't we, how important it is to make everyone aware of the issue. And now we have a school in France, and they have a system where they have 2 eco representatives, and they've set up an eco club, and they're all working together to take some very practical action on climate change, including reducing food waste, growing vegetables and plants, and they've even created their own laundry soap so it doesn't contain harmful chemicals, which I think is inspiring stuff.
Amazing. And we're back in Egypt again with Lycée Al Huraya Bab Al Louk, where their students have again created some really eye-catching posters showing the different futures our planet could have. One future where we resolve to help the climate and we invest in these solutions we talked about. And then another much darker future where we keep going with our burning of our fossil fuels and damaging our climate. So great work there.
And I don't know about you, Devon, but I've been quite inspired by everything I've seen. So I'm going to make my own pledge. I'm going to take shorter showers so that I don't use as much energy to heat the water and I don't use as much chemicals to clean the water. How about you?
I think I could drive less. So I'm going to invest in a bicycle and I'm going to cycle to work more often.
Excellent stuff. So now it's over to you guys again, and in the chat we'd like you to post the actions that you have been taking, so the things that you do already, and some pledges, so things that you are going to do following today and you're going to pledge to do, a promise that you're going to make to us and to the climate. So it's over to the chat now. And whilst you're telling us about your actions and making your pledges, Devon's going to explain a little bit more about COP.
So last year in November 2021, all of the countries from all around the world came together in Glasgow at a big meeting called COP26. And the governments from all around the world made some pledges, promises for what they would do to try and cut their greenhouse gas emissions and to help with the climate. And as part of COP26, a report was produced showing how well countries are doing. And over the last year, that report has been updated. So later this month, in November 2022, at COP27, all of the countries again are going to meet in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, and they're going to be looking at the reports to see which countries have been sticking to their promises and cutting greenhouse gases, and which countries have not been so good.
And there are a few of them, aren't there?
Yes, yes, some close to home. And also at COP27, the governments from around the world are going to be working to see how they can help maybe some of the less developed, poorer countries to help reduce their carbon emissions also. Yes,
because we're all in this together. That's the important thing to remember. Okay, we have had some actions and pledges coming through to us. So at Ashwinning Primary School, they're going to walk to school more often, and they promised to turn the lights off after use.
At Jamnabai Narsee School in India, they have been planting trees in discarded plastic bottles, and it says they have planted 40. Fantastic.
Excellent. And here is an action that's already being taken. So this is from an anonymous source, and they are saying that they've planted many plants in their life, because every year on their birthday, they must plant a plant. So that's a fantastic action. That's something we could all do, isn't it?
We've had a pledge from a student at Nehru World School, and they are saying they pledge to ride their bicycle more. So like me, they're going to use the car less and cycle more.
Fantastic. It's going to keep you fit as well then, isn't it? Yeah. And then from Delves Lane Primary, they've pledged to use less electricity.
We've got a pledge from West Rainton School in the United Kingdom, and they are also going to save electricity by reducing their use of electrical items. Amazing.
And just by reducing the amount of electrical items you buy as well, that can help, can't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and the Nehru World School have also said that they're going to reduce their transport impact, and they're only going to cycle. Fabulous stuff. There's been some wonderful pledges and it's really encouraging to hear about the actions that you're all already taking.
Yes, I like this one. This is from Anonymous, and it is eating less meat, because we know eating meat produces a lot of carbon dioxide. Fantastic.
And they're also going to unplug, so they're going to use a lot less electricity, and they're going to walk and not drive, recycle, and
turn the heating down.
So these are all fantastic actions, aren't they? I particularly like the ones that concentrate on just buying less, because often people think that, you know, acting on climate change is going to cost them more, when in fact, if we all just bought less, we could have a massive impact.
Yeah, maybe we just need to do less things. And then another one from West Rainton, who they're also going to have shorter showers, and they're going to make sure they turn off the taps when not in use.
Fabulous. And I think we can manage one more before we move on, and it's from Nehru World School, and they too are going to have shorter showers. They're going to walk to school, and they're going to stop using plastics. Fabulous. So we are, I don't know about you, Durham, but I've been really happy to hear about all of the actions that everybody's taking. And we're now going to head over to Durham County Council to hear from them about the actions that they've been taking on climate change.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, I'd just like to say that my pledge, actually, which I did 2 years ago, I stopped eating meat. I became a vegetarian, which was a shock to many people I know, but I think that's had a big impact on my carbon footprint. And I have to say, I haven't missed eating meat, so perhaps that's something that others may want to consider as well. So I just wanted to say, before we get close to finishing the conference, thank you very much for everybody for attending today's session. This slide that you can see now on the screen is the phrase that Durham County Council is using for its climate change communications when it's sharing information with people across the county of Durham in the UK. And following on from today's conference, this is what we'd like you to do to follow this phrase. So please think about what you can do on a daily basis at home or at school to reduce your own impact on the climate and turn climate talk into climate action. And as has been talked about by the expert panel, the power of your voice, the power of young people's voices to be able to make people who are currently in charge of things to make change is really important. So do make sure that you make people aware of how you feel and what you think about climate and how people could be changing their actions to be able to have that impact on climate. So I'll hand back over to the OASES team, and then we're just about to hear a short video from Claire O'Malley, who's the Pro Vice Chancellor Global from Durham University, who's recorded this short message for us to watch to come to the end of our conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And over to Claire.
Hello. It's a pleasure for me to formally conclude this COP27 ECO2 Smart Schools Festival. My name is Professor Claire O'Malley, and I'm the Pro Vice Chancellor Global at Durham University in the UK. I'm responsible for the university's international work and for our collaborative partnerships with institutions in many other countries. We all know that the energy transition and climate change are the most significant challenges facing our global society today. The annual Conference of Parties, or COP meetings, organised by the United Nations, are where global leaders get together to agree what actions they can take to tackle climate change. However, this isn't just a task for leaders, it's a task for us all. That's why events such as these are so important. We all have a role in making a difference and tackling climate change. I hope that you've learned many new ideas and insights from our experts at Durham University today. Durham is one of the leading universities in the UK and globally. Our experts are researching innovative new approaches and solutions to these challenging problems. They're taking time to educate students and explain these issues more widely through events such as today's live session. I'm delighted that you've been able to learn from them and to ask questions and be inspired by their answers. Durham University has many degree programs that teach students about the complexities of our world, including new renewable energy technologies and what the energy systems of the future will be. So if you've been inspired by today's event, then I encourage you to continue your studies, to learn from your teachers and follow your dreams. Perhaps some of you might one day come to study at Durham, where you would be very welcome. So I'd like to thank everyone who's helped put today together and our experts who participated in this event today. And most of all, I'd like to thank each of you for participating. The more you and we learn about these issues, the better our shared future will be. Thank you.
So thank you for joining us today for the ECO2 Smart Schools Climate Conference for COP27. We hope you've enjoyed it and we hope you've learnt a lot. As we said, we've recorded the session, so if you want to see it again or you missed anything, or if you want to learn some of the answers that you haven't been able to hear today, go on to the ECO2 Smart Schools website where it'll all be posted.
Yes, and we wish you all the very best of luck with your pledges of action. And if you do take action, please remember to email us to let us know. And you can do that at eco2smartschools@oases.org.uk.
Thank you very much for being here, and we hope to see you next year. Bye.
Goodbye.